Hello again, everyone. Thanks for joining us for this Thursday's edition of Alaska Weather. I'm Dave Percy, a meteorologist with the National Weather Service, and I'll be hosting today's show. First up, hazardous weather graphic. Not a lot left on it, just a couple areas now. Wind advisory out through tonight and into tomorrow here for the Alaska Range area. For south and southeast winds continue gusting anywhere from 40 to 60 miles an hour, and that's probably out through tomorrow afternoon. And then winter weather advisory continues out for the extreme eastern Arctic coast there for Barter Island, Kaktovik. That's out through tonight for the overnight hours until 6 a.m. on Friday. And looking for winds there of the 30-35 mile per hour range out of the east-northeast. That's creating blowing snow like you're seeing much of the day today there in that area, with visibilities reduced to less than half a mile at times. And that'll continue through tonight and then start to improve tomorrow. Looking at satellite imagery today, we had this system lifting northward and weakening rapidly as it moves inland here, really washing out. Just massive clouds of moisture left by the afternoon hours, and rain beginning to let up here along the North Gulf Coast and down across the Panhandle. This system brought anywhere up to 30 to 35 inches of snow to State Turnagain Pass in the mountains here, the Kenai Peninsula areas, and that's creating high avalanche hazards from Girdwood all the way down to Seward, and travel's not really recommended there. Anyway, this area to the north, not really seeing a whole lot of precipitation. Light amounts not very significant. It's all really hung up back down here to the south, with Seward picking up about 3/4 of an inch during the day today, as well as Seldovia, and the trough trailing into the southeast coast. This system, kind of a weak system pulling up there, brought the stronger winds in earlier. That's over now, and just showers beginning to taper off, but anywhere from 4/10 of an inch falling at Petersburg and Sitka, with lighter amounts elsewhere. See a pretty good break here between this system lifting northward and the next one down here that's taking a similar track right up toward the Kenai Peninsula. And that'll be coming in tonight and into the Panhandle as well for better conditions. This really won't affect the interior too much, really washing out there. So the 40 mile an hour wind gusts recorded this afternoon at Palmer and down at Kenai, for example, with anywhere, or actually with Delta receiving 50 mile an hour wind gusts, but those 40 mile an hour wind gusts I mentioned at Palmer and Kenai, those are already coming down today. Gale warnings for Cook Inlet, those ending this afternoon, or are in the process of ending right now, and not expected to return at least tonight into tomorrow. And then we have this weak trough out here over the southwest, band of persistent light snow going on there from Bethel back to the northwest, across the Yukon Delta in towards, or across actually, St. Lawrence Island, with both Savunga and Gamble reporting snow all afternoon. Isolated snow showers here over the Bering Sea around the Pribilofs, with a pretty good area clearing right off the southwest coast down across the Alaska Peninsula, eastern Aleutians. Weakening band of moisture right through here, producing snow today at Adak, with snow showers out west to Shimia. And also some clearing here, Kodiak Island. Looks like back up into the western interior. And of course, in the lee side of the mountainous terrain there, the Alaska Range, some clearing up in this area. And we'll see for the forecast tonight, this system, at least the frontal boundary, the low center, just getting on the map here late tonight, and the frontal boundary all the way up Triple Point there, close to Kodiak. So rain and wind on the increase there, as well as the Gulf of Alaska. Very good fetch of moisture coming up with this. So chances of rain will increase late tonight toward morning there for the southeast coast, especially on the north coast. Mixture of precipitation inland, but not expecting this to get too far inland during the night tonight. And otherwise, a pretty good break here over the Copper River Basin into the interior. Still some lingering snow showers along the eastern slopes of the western Alaska Range, maybe as far north as Denali, but definitely diminished from today. Stays fair here over the Bristol Bay area, Alaska Peninsula, and just isolated snow showers now. That band really washing out here. Look for some clearing from Togiak Bay and Cape Newenham right up into the southwest interior. But not a whole lot of clearing, but definitely a let up in the snow shower activity. These just some scattered isolated snow showers in the interior there. And again, that winter weather advisory is out tonight for the eastern Arctic coast. Otherwise, conditions a lot better back to the west. And the Bering Sea, not too bad. just still some isolated snow showers with light wind conditions out here over the Pribilofs and the entire eastern and southeast Bering Sea. Light winds, not much of it, no gradient at all really, or at least on this scale. So light winds, eastern Aleutians, Alaska Peninsula. This front edging northward keeps that chance of rain or snow line right near the central western Aleutian areas from Adak on over to Kamchatka, probably barely reaching the Atka area. But winds there, not much of a problem. Still pretty gusty up here along the eastern or the western Arctic coast as well. Still could see some gusts 25, 35 miles an hour, Point Lay down to Cape Lisburne. And again, about 30 to 35 for the east side as well. And looking at the forecast for tomorrow, we'll see this low center finally gets up on the map a little better there. Occluded front kind of hanging back there. Not making a jog to the north. It did tonight, sort of slowing down a little bit and still just south of Kenai or just about right on top of them. But rainfall on the increase here in the North Gulf Coast, becoming moderate to heavy, southern Seward Peninsula tomorrow afternoon, and also rain on the increase tomorrow continues for the Panhandle with those winds on the increase as well out of the south-southeast with a mixture of rain or snow developing, becoming a little more widespread, trying to edge into the southern interior there, but getting hung up along the coast range there. So precipitation type, as usual, will be dependent on your elevation and time of day. But anyway, look for mixed rain and snow back down along the northeast Bristol Bay area. Areas of snow again along another trough, kind of re-energize a little bit. Really just light stuff here in this zone, mostly in the form of snow showers back up in this area. Scattered snow showers along the eastern Brooks Range, probably overdid it there a little bit. Probably be very isolated. Nothing over the eastern interior. Upper Tanana Valley, 40-mile country, looking good with partly sunny skies, mild temperatures, maybe up near 40, 41 there in the Fairbanks area. And Arctic coast, east side, a lot better now with some clearing there. And this moisture stays off the coast on the west side and barely any up here over the northwest where I have it shaded in. Really just scattered snow showers along this trough, maybe a little more extensive down here to the south. Southeast Bering, really nice day tomorrow, tomorrow, Friday, here with light winds, maybe some sunshine. Nikolsky on Alaska, Alaska Peninsula here, Cold Bay, could see some clearing as well. And that'll extend right up into the western interior. Yukon-Kuskokwim Delta could see partly sunny skies right up into Norton Sound. Maybe the southern Seward Peninsula with light winds there. A little bit better chance of some light, scattered, isolated, mixed moisture here, again with a persistent, very weak trough there over Adak and Atka. Otherwise, this low, pretty weak, keeps a chance of snow showers in across St. Lawrence Island, and that's about it. And then we'll see the next day for Friday night. This will track northwest, and then on Saturday afternoon, we'll see it is all the way up to the lower Yukon River Valley area there. Weakening to about 984 millibars with this south to northwest flow here. It's going to keep it wet along the North Gulf Coast into the Coast Range, Kenai Peninsula, southern western Prince William Sound, with precipitation moderate to heavy, trending toward more of the moderate or light to moderate at times as the day wears on. And lighter precipitation amounts, but it looks pretty wet here across the southeast coast as well, but amounts won't be as heavy as back here to the west. And also trending towards showers in the afternoon. Wind's not much of a problem here. Maybe some gales persisting on the western North Gulf Coast, Barren Island areas, but still southerly winds, a little breezy, but mild over the interior, especially here up north of the Alaska Range there into the Tanana Valley. Look for highs possibly pushing 40 to 45 with some sunshine up into the upper Yukon Valley and dry conditions into the Copper River Basin. Chance areas of light snow here along and back to the west and northwest of that warm front, and the low center from the Kuskokwim Valley on up across Norton Sound, Seward Peninsula. Pretty good chance of snow for the Selawik, Kobuk Valley areas, southern slopes of the western Brooks Range. And pretty good chance of seeing some clearing there around St. Lawrence Island, kind of a dry slot dropping down in the area there. And trough here over the Bering Sea coming out of the north and northwest with some colder air. That'll increase the snow shower chance there for the Pribilof Islands, right on back to the central Aleutians. Looking at low temperatures for tonight, 5 to 15 below here for the north slope and the Arctic coast. And near zero through the Brooks Range, single numbers south of the mountains there, teens, central interior. And mild low 30s here for south central Alaska, all the way down to Kodiak, and in the 20s to near 30 for the Panhandle. Lows 30 to 35 for the Panhandle, upper 20s near 30 for the Aleutians, getting ahead of myself, and kind of a variation there over the eastern interior. Highs tomorrow staying below zero over much of the Arctic coast. Again, up near 40, 41 or 2 here in the Tanana Valley. Same thing here, south central Alaska and the Susitna Valley into Cook Inlet, lower 40s Kodiak Island, 40s lower to mid for the southeast coast, lower 20s St. Lawrence Island, and out in the Aleutians, not too bad, roughly, well, highs right around freezing for Shimia, mid 30s for Adak and Atka, all the way over to the western Alaska Peninsula. And for the lows the following morning, lower 20s for the Pribilofs. Not much change here for the Aleutians for your lows. Upper 20s up into Bristol Bay, and mid 20s in the lower 30s, south central Alaska. A little below zero there for the Arctic coast, showing a warming trend near 20 in the Tanana Valley to 30s to near 40 for the southeast coast, followed by highs Saturday afternoon, about like you'll see tomorrow afternoon here for the Panhandle, 40 to 47. Lower 40s, the Susitna Valley into Cook Inlet, and again Kodiak Island, and the Tanana Valley as well, with 20s back to the west here, and single numbers above zero for the Arctic coast, while highs mostly in the upper 30s for the Aleutians.
And now, aviation weather around Alaska.
First flying weather graphic here showing band IFR inland in toward the northeast Bristol Bay, back up across the southern Kuskokwim Valley to eastern Norton Sound, some VFR farther just to the west of that, and then more marginal VFR. IFR west central Aleutians, generally marginal VFR in the central interior, and then some VFR here, Copper River Basin, and in the upper Tanana Valley areas, and IFR from western Prince William Sound across the Gulf of Alaska, and then on down the coastline there of the Panhandle. For tomorrow afternoon, that pulls back to the west there with VFR and marginal VFR for the southeast coast. IFR Prince William Sound into southern Cook Inlet, Kamishak Bay, Shelikof Strait, on down to the southwest. Improving here over the interior. VFR in the increase, all the Tanana Valley and the upper Yukon down into the Copper River Basin, back to the west, and just a narrow band of marginal VFR here over the inland areas of the west up to the Brooks Range. And also not too bad out over the Bering Sea in the Aleutians here. Adak, though, in the IFR zone, but Fox Islands, Alaska Peninsula, VFR. For the following morning on Saturday, we've got persisting VFR here in the central interior. IFR band there from the Nulato Hills southward into Bristol Bay. Kodiak Island, North Gulf Coast, all socked in the Gulf of Alaska with IFR right over to the Panhandle. And for Saturday afternoon, we've got a band IFR now from the Kotzebue Sound area, Kivalina, across the Seward Peninsula, right on down northeast Bristol Bay and Kodiak Island. IFR persisting with continued southerly flow here for the North Gulf Coast, southern Kenai Peninsula into Prince William Sound, and areas of IFR over the Panhandle. Out to the west, not too bad again, just marginal VFR with some areas of VFR thrown in, and that same pattern also good for the north slope to the Arctic coast. Anaktuvik, marginal at times tomorrow, same forecast for Adigan, generally a marginal VFR kind of day for that pass. Lake Clark and Merrill with the southeast flow here, marginal with the lowest conditions on both the eastern entrances, definitely IFR on those sides. And same thing for Rainy, marginal VFR, IFR on the eastern entrance, better conditions off to the west. Windy, occasional possible marginal VFR, if there's any at all, will be down here on the southern entrance or maybe just to the south. Otherwise, looking pretty good with VFR. And for Isabel, occasional marginal VFR, and Mentasta, VFR, possible marginal conditions on the southern entrance. And for Tanita, VFR, but this east side here trending toward marginal with some moisture lifting up to the southeast there. So it could go marginal later in the afternoon. And for Portage, IFR, Chilkoot and White, marginal VFR, trending toward IFR conditions, a little bit of a deterioration into the afternoon. And for the freezing levels at the surface here, well, actually up to 2,000 feet now there across Prince of Wales Island, to the surface cutting across the Panhandle, and up along the North Gulf Coast, down along the Alaska Peninsula, and all the way down here hanging over the Aleutians with icing shaping up like this. Areas of moderate, considerable moderate rime icing here for the North Gulf Coast back to the southern Kenai Peninsula and the Kamishak Bay. Just isolated moderate out toward Bristol Bay into the Kuskokwim River Valley area or the Delta. And then just some spotty stuff possible up here over the northwest interior, St. Lawrence Island, maybe around Adak. And this trying to push into the Panhandle. And for the jet stream, got next system down here to the south for tomorrow midday that'll be moving northward over the following 24-hour period and dissipating. And that's going to keep us in a general southerly flow here across mainland Alaska through the weekend, probably through Monday, the way it looks at this point in time, with higher pressure rebuilding over western Canada and the trough back out over the Bering Sea. 9,000 feet, this low tracking northward here, increasing the winds 30-40 knots there. Kodiak Island back up along the North Gulf Coast and up to 35 knots along the coast of the Panhandle, 15 to 20 over the northeast interior. Pretty light winds here for the Aleutian southern Bering Sea, just 10 to 15, maybe 20 knots out west. And for the 3,000 foot wind flow, pretty much the same, 25 to 40, strongest off the southeast coast, inland 15 to 20 knots and lighter over the Aleutians. Looking at turbulence, considerable moderate chop here for the entire southeast coast coming in, as well as the North Gulf Coast and the Kenai Peninsula, Cook Inlet down to Fognak Island, also up here over the eastern interior, White Mountains on the lee side of the Alaska Range. And after the break, I'll be back with a look at the marine forecasts.
The return of the Vern.
Welcome to Stargazers. I'm James Albury, director of the Kika Silva Pla Planetarium in Gainesville, Florida.
And I'm Dehne Regis, astronomer from the Cincinnati Observatory. We're here to help you find your way around the sky. We have 2 springtime mysteries to explore this week.
That's right, Dean. Next Wednesday, March 20th, is the vernal equinox, also known as the official Spring of the Leaf Day. Meanwhile, March 25th marks the official Spring of the Year Day.
And if that weren't confusing enough, have you ever wondered why Easter jumps around every year? Well, it has to do with the vernal equinox and the timing of the full moon.
What are we talking about? Let's show you. Have you ever wondered why we call spring, spring? Well, that word spring is simply short for the phrases spring of the leaf and spring of the year. Now, spring of the leaf is pretty obvious because at this time of the year, leaves literally do spring up out of the branches and grass springs up out of the ground. And that's why we call spring, spring.
But what does spring of the year mean? Well, believe it or not, before 1752 in England and America, the new year officially began when spring began, on March 25th. Or to put it quite simply, the new year sprang up at the same time the leaves and grass did.
In fact, when George Washington and Ben Franklin were young, they and all the other American colonists wished each other Happy New Year and Happy Spring on the same day, on March 25th. However, when the English calendar was reformed, Parliament declared that starting in 1752, the new year would no longer begin in March, but would be celebrated on January 1st, a tradition begun by the Romans in 153 BC.
Now, both springs are related to the vernal equinox, which happens this year on Wednesday, March 20th at 5:58 p.m. Eastern Daylight Time.
But what does the term vernal equinox really mean? Let's not forget that the first day of spring is really an astronomical event, which marks one of the 2 days of the year when our sun is smack dab on the celestial equator.
The other day being the first day of autumn. When this happens in September, we call it the autumnal equinox, and when it happens in March, we call it the vernal equinox. The sun will rise just a little bit farther north of east each day, and will set a little bit farther north of west each day.
The sun will continue moving northward week after week until June 21st, the first day of summer, the summer solstice, when it will rise its farthest north of east and set its farthest north of west.
After which, it will start to move southward week after week until once again it will rise due east and set due west on the autumnal equinox, the first day of autumn in September.
All right, let's talk about why Easter does a bunny hop on the calendar every year.
Many religious holidays are scheduled around astronomical events.
Easter is traditionally set to be the first Sunday after the first full moon after the vernal equinox. This year, the vernal equinox occurs at 5:58 p.m. on Wednesday, March 20th. The full moon officially occurs later that evening at 11:43 p.m.
So, even though the full moon on March 20th technically happens after the vernal equinox, the following Sunday, March 24th, doesn't officially count.
You see, the trick with Easter is that for religious reasons, the ecclesiastical full moon has to fall on or after the following day, March 21st, in order for the following Sunday to be Easter.
Tricky. Therefore, Easter this year is going to be on Sunday, April 21st, after our next full moon, which happens on Friday, April 19th.
So there you have it, an old-fashioned Happy New Year with a little history on how spring got its name.
And a full moon that almost triggered Easter. Keep looking up.
And now, marine weather around Alaska.
Welcome back. Today's sea ice analysis. Still showing some growth up here over the northern Bering Sea, and over the next week expecting it to still increase here through this zone and maybe even along the southwest coast, and to a lesser extent here back to the west. So moving on to the coastal water forecast. Gale warnings for the Panhandle tomorrow on the outer coastline anyway, 35 to 40 knots on the south coast, 40 knots with 18-foot seas on the north coast, and gale force gust southerlies in northern Lynn Canal, otherwise seas at about 4 feet. Southeast 20 for Stevens Passage, and 25 knots southeast winds for Clarence Strait with seas at about 5 feet. And then for the Saturday outlook, southeast 30 for Clarence Strait here with southerly winds 30 knots, just under gale force on the south coast. Minimum gales on the north coast, seas around 20 feet, and southeast 25 gusts 40 for Stevens Passage. Same thing for northern Lynn Canal. And for Prince William Sound tomorrow, east 30 knots, seas 7 feet. Gales for the North Gulf Coast out of the east-southeast, 35 to 40 knots, seas at about 15 feet, and 40-knot easterlies for the Barren Islands. Northeast 40, Kamishak Bay, northeast 40, southern Cook Inlet, and north at about 30 north of the Forelands. So coming back up with those winds again, back to gales after losing them this afternoon and tonight. And then for Saturday, small craft advisories now for Cook Inlet northeast at 25 to 30 knots. And minimum gales here for Kamishak Bay out of the east at 35 and southeast 30 for the Barrens into the western North Gulf Coast. Those get into gale force here around Middleton Island, with those seas up around 20 feet, and still east 30 knots. Prince William Sound, seas 6 feet. Kodiak Island on the eastern side here, 25 knot winds out of the east. Gales, Shelikof Strait, northeast 35, and then north winds 30 knots here from Sitkinak to Cape Sarachev, and from Cape Sarachev up through Bristol Bay, north at 20. And for the Saturday outlook, we've got northwest winds 30 knots across the peninsula, also from Bristol Bay and southwest to Sitkinak, 30 knot northwesterlies. Pretty uniform, southeast 25 here for the east side of Kodiak, and those winds coming down to 20 knots in Shelikof Strait. And for the far western Aleutians, north 20 over to about Kiska toward Adak, about 25 in that zone there. Otherwise, easterlies 15 to 20 for the central Aleutians, not too bad. And even the Fox Islands, variable winds tomorrow, 5 to 15 knots, about sums it up with seas 4 to 7 feet. And then those pick up on Saturday there at the tightening gradient, northwest 25 to 30, another shot of colder air coming down. Seas running about 7 to 11 feet there, 25 knot winds for Adak and Atka as well, and then staying light out here to the west for at about 20 knots there for the western zones from the west-northwest. And for the southwest coast, south of Nunavak Island, westerlies 20 knots and southeast 10. Light winds for the Pribilofs, west 20 for St. Matthew Island. St. Lawrence Island, south 25 with 5-foot seas. And then the outlook for Saturday, northerlies 20 knots, Norton Sound and St. Lawrence Island, northwest 15, increasing dramatically here south of Nunavak Island up to 30 knots with 8-foot seas. Otherwise, 20-knot northwest winds for the Pribilofs and St. Matthew Island. Up along the Arctic coast, east side, east and central, easterlies 20 knots. Brisk wind advisories there on the western coast, all the way down to Cape Thompson, east-northeast at 30 there, and then south 20 from Cape Thompson to Wales. Outlook for Sunday or Saturday, those swing around again to the north here. So from Wales to Cape Beaufort, 30-knot winds there, 25 knots. Brisk wind advisory winds continue on the west side, and east-northeast 20 for the central and east coast, but over toward Demarcation Point again, picking back up to 25 knots. And for tonight, system coming through southern Alaska today really washes out and dissipates pretty rapidly, so won't be any more significant weather with that feature. But the next big storm rolling northward here increases the wind and precipitation late tonight, Kodiak Island, North Gulf Coast into the Panhandle, and a winter weather advisory out for tonight for the eastern Arctic coast continues for visibilities and blowing snow down to less than a quarter mile at times. We also have a wind advisory out for the Alaska Range through tomorrow and maybe even into tomorrow evening for winds 50 to 60 miles an hour in gusts continuing. Otherwise, for Friday, wind and rain, gale force winds along the North Gulf Coast and heavy precipitation. And that pushes into the southwest on Saturday with continued wet conditions along the Panhandle.
These forecasts are for planning purposes only. Call 1-800-WX-BRIEF for a formal pre-flight briefing. Always file a flight plan before you go flying. The U.S. Coast Guard Auxiliary urges you to leave a float plan with a friend or the harbor master before you go boating.